very much. Thank you so much for coming on such a cold day outside. I'm sure many of you thought, oh, it's nice and warm in bed, I don't want to go outside, but you came all the way, so I appreciate it. Thank you for coming. I want to find out who's here today. I know that we have at least one student or one graduate student. I know we have some parents and some teachers. So how many people are teachers? 1, 2, 3, 4, half, some? Yeah, okay. How many people are parents about many things which can help everyone? Specifically, I want to talk about 8 secrets for learning English. I'm going to use some examples later about Starship English because I wrote it, I'm an expert on it, I spent many years writing this series, but also I think all the ideas you can use if you're a parent helping your child to learn English, if you're a teacher teaching English, or even if you're a student studying how to teach English or something about English as well. So I think it's all very useful. I'll start off, I'll go through the 8 secrets, then I'm going to give a short introduction to how a textbook is structured, how we structure one unit from the textbook. So you can see how it works, how a teacher would teach it, and if you're a parent at home, how you can use some of the resources to help your child learn better. And then after that, I'll go through and I'll ask you some questions to think, how can you use these 8 points at the beginning to help your student? And we'll use some examples from the book as well to do that, okay? All right, so let's begin. Let's start off with the first one. The first secret, the first thing that we need to do is to help students set goals. When I want to do anything, I often have goals, and I take a short-term goal, a medium-term goal, and a long-term goal. Say if I wanted to become a chef, a chef, something like that. I want to become a famous chef. I would probably have a short-term goal, maybe learn how to cook, right? A medium-term goal, maybe I want to go to a cooking school. And a long-term goal, maybe I want to open my own restaurant. It helps in my head to have these different goals. But often with students, we send them to school and we just tell them, study English, study math, study geography, study history. Why? Why? In fact, very young children don't always ask why, but they often think it. Why am I studying this? Especially if they don't like it. They think, why am I studying this? What is this for? Right? And unfortunately, we often say, oh, it's so you can pass school or you pass a test or something. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But the big idea is, if we talk to our children and say, what's your goal for this? Huh? Well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do in learning English? Oh, I don't know. Well, I guess, I want to learn the words in this unit, right? Short-term goal. What else do you want to do? Well, I guess I want to learn more words about things in this unit, so maybe I can do some things, talk to some people outside of class, or I can read comic books in English, or watch an English movie or cartoons in English. Maybe I understand that, right? Medium-term goal. That's a medium-term goal. And then they might have a long-term goal. I want to speak English well so that I can get a job speaking English, because then I can travel, maybe to other countries, or I can work for an international company, do something interesting. Maybe it allows me to do things I want, like getting into university, different kinds of courses. So this is an important first step. Talk to the kids. Talk to your students if you're a teacher. Talk to your children if you're a parent. And say, why are you studying English? What do you want to learn this week? What do you want to learn this year? What do you want to learn for the rest of your life in English? Because English is different from many other skills. Students learn English, but they also forget, right? So it's a continuous thing. I myself, I think I'm still learning English. What? What? Still learning English? Professor? Still learning English? English professor? Yes, I am. Because I'm always reading new things. I'm always learning about new genres or styles of writing. I'm always learning new vocabulary. So I'm still an English student as well, right? It never stops, never stops. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, the second point is finding motivation. And this is related to the first one. Now, motivation is very different in different children at different ages, right? You think about very, very young children. Why do young children learn? Well, in fact, young children learn because it's new. It's new and it's interesting. And everything is interesting because they haven't done it before. They love to learn. Now, I have two sons. Now they're 9 and 12. But when they were little, they loved to do anything, right? Daddy, what are you doing? Oh, I'm taking out the garbage, right? Oh, Daddy, can I take out the garbage too? Okay, go ahead now. Now my oldest one's 12 years old. Oh, could you take out the garbage? No, you do it. Yeah, not so rude, but yeah, it changes, right? What changes? Well, in school, when they're very young, in fact, you can teach very young children, and I know those of you who are teachers, it's great. It's great to be a primary school, elementary school teacher. Your students love you, right? They love you. They want to please you. So if you say, today we're going to do this, most of the time, most of the students are quite interested, and they will do it. They don't even ask. Their motivation is internal, just because they want to do it. We can still help them with that, because then we use language like, I think you can do this, or here's something really difficult. You see if you can do it. And that's the best motivation for young learners. What happens when they get a little bit older? I said that I had a 12-year-old now. He's different. He's much different. He goes to school, and he says this thing which all parents or all teachers hate. He says, you say, okay, today we're going to be learning this, right? And he says, are we going to get marks on this, right? Is this going to be on the test, right? So he's curious about, all of a sudden, the motivation is not inside, it's not internal, it's external. All of a sudden, it much more has to do with marks. So he's looking also not just at his own marks, but he's looking at his peers. Is he doing better than the other students? It's a concern for him, right? Is he doing better than the rest of the school? Is he going to be a top student? These are more his concerns. And of course, he's worried about what his parents think at report card time. But at this age, it's quite interesting because if you give them their test back, right? And for you teachers, I know how difficult this is. You go through and you spend your whole weekend, marking. Monday morning you say, okay, here's your tests back, right? And they go, oh, A, over the shoulder, or D, oh, over the shoulder. They don't really learn from it quite often. They're just interested more in the marks to see how they did. Okay, so this is something we have to work with as teachers and as parents. When we give a student an assignment, when we mark an assignment, we go back to them and we say, okay, what did you do right? What did you do wrong? You figure it out and you tell me, right? What could you do better? There's a story about Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of England, during World War II, he had an aide, an attaché, somebody helping him. The attaché had to write a document. So he took it to, he was very nervous, first time working for Prime Minister Churchill. And the Prime Minister sends it back, says, not good enough. Sends it back to him. So the guy says, oh, he's a bit embarrassed, right? So he rewrites it, works, fixes a couple things, takes it back, gives it to him a second time. A second time it comes back to him, says, not good enough, right? The guy's now he's a little angry and a little upset, so he works on it and finds a couple more things, writes it a little bit better, takes it back a third time. Winston Churchill sends it back to him, says, not good enough. And he sends it, and he goes through, he says, he looks at it, he says, goes back, he marches up, he says, this is good enough, this is perfect. And he said, oh, then this is the one that I will read, right? So he didn't read the other ones. He just said it's not good enough, right? So he was asking the worker, that was a joke, it was funny. He was asking the worker to look at his own work and be critical, self-critical of his own work. And at the Middle Ages, that's what we need to do. Then the last one, this is not a series for adults, but what do adults learn for? Adults learn for money quite often, right? If you're learning a new language, it's maybe because you want to get a better job, or you want to go to a better university, or maybe you fall in love with an English-speaking person and you want to learn a language for that reason. But generally money. So the motivations at different ages are different, and we need to think about that. We'll talk about that more toward the end of the session, each of these points. Okay. The third one is we need to find good models. In this case, students need to have good models for their language. There was a Polish language teacher, a language teacher from Poland, and he did a wonderful, wonderful thing. He tried an experiment with his child. Now, it was just after World War II. They were living in a small house, and his parents were living with them, and his brother was living with them, and another aunt was living with them. And there was all these people, but each of them, and all of them spoke Polish. But also, all of them spoke one different language. One spoke French, one spoke German, one spoke English. And what he did is he said to them, to 6 of them, he said, each of you, you speak to the child, but you only speak to the child in German, ever. Right? The next one, he said, you only speak to the child in French, ever, right? And this child had a good model. Do you think he could learn the languages? In fact, he did. He became a professor at Sydney, at the university in Sydney, eventually. But he went on to become an important language teacher because he had a good model, a good, strong model. Now, often, how much time do our children spend learning English and actually using English? Quite often it's not very much. They go into the class and the teacher's saying, oh, good morning class, I'm doing this. No, don't do that, pay attention, do this, okay, turn to page 6. All of this quite often is done in Korean. It's not done in English, right? They're not using English very much. So the student's listening, going blah, 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 okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, page, and then finally they have to listen to some English. Then maybe they have to speak for 2 minutes or something in English. Then the class is over. See you next week, right? It's difficult. It's difficult because they don't have strong models. So as teachers, what can we do? As teachers, one thing that we can do is we can use English constantly in the classroom. If a child wants to go to the bathroom, right, make them ask it in English. Right? Say, oh, teacher, can't remember the word. Have to, You'll learn, right? Stress, very good. If they, break a pencil, they're missing something, anything, make them speak in English. If you're saying, turn to page 26, giving the introduction, anything else, speak in English. So try that. If you're a teacher, try that. In an English class, don't speak any second language. It's tempting, and it's easier. It's easier to say, oh, 감사합니다 means thank you, right? Yeah? Oh, you say thank you. It's much easier, but it's better for the students if you use a direct language approach like that. The textbooks are important as well. We'll just play a little bit here. I think this is one. Does that work? Maybe not. No, it doesn't. It's okay. We'll come back to that in a second. All right, so anyway, the textbooks and the models and all the materials that they use are important. But also in playtime. Are they using, children love to read books, get them an English book. They love to play games, get them an English game. They love to watch movies or animations or videos, right? Get some ones that don't have Korean subtitles, only in English, or turn off the Korean subtitles, only in English. So they're exposed to good models of English much more often. It's a good opportunity for them. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Okay, the fourth secret point is focus on strategies and skills. Anybody know, what's the difference? We always say this, strategies and skills. What's the difference between strategy and a skill? Anybody know? No? It's like church, people put their heads down, yeah. So shy. It's okay, I'll tell you. All right, I'll give you an example, all right? Say I want to look at a newspaper, right? Pick up the newspaper this morning at the hotel. It's free, yeah? Fantastic, yeah. So what do? How do I read the newspaper? Well, I pick it up and I go, oh, what's this? Ah, I remember. It's a newspaper, right? Huh? Okay. How should I read it? Oh, I don't know. Well, last week I read a novel. I started at the first line and I read every line of the novel until I got to the last page. I'll read it like that. I'll start at the very top. I'll go through every page until I get to the last word. Is that how you read a newspaper? No. Anybody read a newspaper like that? No, nobody does. What do you do when you read a newspaper? What do you do first? Yeah? Yeah? You look at maybe the headlines? The headlines. What do you do? Maybe look at the pictures or something first? You look at the picture. If the picture's interesting, you think, oh, what's going on there? And then you read something. You see a headline. You read something. Then what do? You read the first paragraph. Think, oh, old news or boring or I already know this. Turn the page. Other people will say, right? There's other people would say, oh, go to the sports section first, right? Yeah, look at the sports. Ah, yes, sports section. In fact, these are strategies for reading. We don't read everything in the same way. We don't read a newspaper the same way we read a novel or a poem or a play or anything else or an advertisement. In fact, we all read them differently because we have different strategies. So a strategy is a method of doing something. And we have strategies not just in reading, but also in writing and speaking and listening. If I'm writing a note for my wife, it's different than if I'm writing a note for my boss, right? So I understand that I have different strategies. Now, if I have to think about it, it's a strategy. If I don't have to think about it, it's a skill. It becomes a skill when you don't think about it. Now, this is what's important, is when we teach students, we need to teach them the strategies. Maybe, of course, they've seen a newspaper before, but they don't really know how to read it or what to do or something, a good way, efficient and effective way to read it. We need to teach them strategies. Say, oh, you should do this first, then do this, then do that. Skim and scan, right? Read for the main idea. Read for content, things like that. We do that, and then we have to practice them. When you practice them, that's when they become skills. Unconscious, just automatic skills that students do. So this is the important thing to do. In fact, I'll tell you something. Not just English, every subject. And if you're a parent, again, what is this? Practice. It means that when a child is doing something, you should ask them, say, how are you reading that newspaper? Look at that advertisement. Do you think that's funny? Why do you think it's funny? How are you looking at that? How are you understanding it? And those ways we can help the students. We'll look at the next one. Create an English environment. I hate to say it, but this looks like many English classrooms I've seen, right? Quite boring, white walls, especially actually at the older level. We have to make sure that we have an English environment for the students. Now, it's easy to do in a classroom. In many classrooms I know you have wonderful posters up and pictures of English-speaking places and things that will interest the students. Years ago, I was in Shanghai, and I went into a classroom, and it was a classroom in a room smaller than this, but it had these panels. You see how the panels go up in the wall? Like this. And in fact, what she had is all over the wall. She had posters, pages from magazines with like information written out on them. It's saying like a picture of a living room. It's a table, chairs, dining room, things like that on it, right? Everything up there, student work, lyrics to songs, everything. But it covered the walls, absolutely covered the walls. I said, oh, so much work for you. Oh, how do you find the time? She said, no. I make the students do it, right? Make the students do it. Each student gets 18 inches, right? 18 inches, half a meter, and that's your ceiling to the floor. You put up something, you can do it all year. And you keep putting up things. And then the students see what somebody else does. Somebody puts up a picture of Tom Cruise. Oh, I'm going to put a picture of somebody else here. And they'll write something about it, put it up. They put up their essays or their poems or anything that they've written, their projects. Fantastic. let the students do the work. Myself, I'm a lazy teacher, right? Be a lazy teacher. Let students do more work and create an English environment. But not just at school. Not just at school. Create an English environment at home. So in your child's bedroom, there's always room to put up some extra poster in English or some things. If the student does good work at school, make sure you put it up on the fridge or somewhere in the house where they see it and they know that you appreciate what they're doing in English. It can really help. With my children, this is embarrassing, but my children, mathematics. So they sit on the toilet, right? So next to the toilet, I put mathematic tables, numbers, things like that. I don't know. Maybe they look at it. Maybe they're bored. They look at it. I don't know. Maybe they become math genius or math professor. I don't know. We'll see. But it can't hurt. Can't hurt. Okay, look at the next one. Okay, the reading. Reading, I can't emphasize this enough. Read, read, read. Children have to read. In fact, in the classroom, there's seldom enough time to really learn a language effectively. The students who do really well are studying outside of class. The easiest way to do that is to read. So again, if you're a parent, make sure that you take your child to the library or to the bookstore as presents or as rewards. Get them English books. They can be cartoon books or comic books. It doesn't matter. There was a study done a number of years ago in England with parents and with babies who were too young to read. They were like between newborns and 1 year old. And they said to the parents, they said to one control group, they said, read to them for 1 hour every day. That's all you have to do. Read to them for 1 hour every day. And what they found is that it didn't matter what they read. All these students became better students because they were picking up the sound of the language, they were picking up vocabulary patterns, the way the language, sentence structure. Even though they were so young, just 1 year old, they picked it up and they improved their scores later. But the other thing they found that was really interesting is there was one woman who did this, but she was herself very uneducated. So what did she read for an hour every day? The phone book. So she read the phone book, A. Clark, 999-6673. B. Clark, da-da-da-da-da, like that. I don't know why she would be so boring, but she read the phone book, maybe the advertisements in the phone book, but it was boring. But still, that child still did better than the control group that weren't being read to. So read to the children if you can, in class certainly. Outside of class, if you can, if you have the English skills, read to them, but also make sure that they have access to books. So that's extremely important. Read. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, they need to find ways of practicing the language. This has several effects. Now, in the classroom, of course, you have to have time, but that's what homework is for as well. Homework should be, in many cases, pleasurable. Again, a difference. My 12-year-old comes home, do you have homework? Yes, I do, right? The younger one, do you have homework? Yes, we have a project, right? I can't wait to do it. It's crazy, but his teacher has found that she can get him excited about doing the homework because he thinks it's challenging and interesting and fun and exciting. And they're learning something new at the younger age, right? But they need to find opportunities. My children, I lived the last 2 years, I lived in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates, in the Persian Gulf, right? In the Middle East. For 2 years, I lived there. I was working with the university there. And my children studied Arabic, right? So last summer, when we came home, we were in Toronto for a little bit on a visit, and there was a truck. It was a fast food truck, and it had some Arabic written on it. So I asked my 9-year-old, I said, it's Arabic, what does it say? And he didn't know the word, but he knew the letters and how letters work in Arabic. It's really curvy, and it starts this way, right? It's going the other way. And he says, it says halal, halal. And he didn't know what halal meant. Halal means meat which is prepared for Muslims, right? So it said it's a special kind of meat served in this fast food truck. So it was interesting because that was an opportunity for him to use the language, And did he ever feel good, right? He felt fantastic because all of a sudden he was showing that he knew something that I didn't, right? So again, if you're a parent, there's English all over Seoul. Everywhere in Seoul, all over Korea, right? There's English everywhere. You go through this building on your way out, see how much English there is. In the stores, in the signs, everywhere there's English. You say to your child, what does that say? What does that say? What does that mean? Okay, we have to go. You read the English. What does it say, right? And get them to use that and explain it to you. They'll feel good. But they need reading, writing, speaking, and listening opportunities to practice. Okay, and finding new challenges. They have to find new challenges. Now, in a class, it would be great if every student was like a machine and they were all at the same level, right? Like we have a new class of robots. Now, everybody knows exactly the same thing. But they don't. They don't. We used to think that children were like empty vases. We open up their head, you pour in the information, right? You close it up. But it's not like that. Children come to the classroom with their own experiences and their own ideas. And they want opportunities to share that. But they also need more challenges, especially the better students, right? So you need to, as teachers, you need to find ways and identify the better students. I think quite often the worst students are the best students. Why? Because they're bored, right? If they really know what's, oh yeah, teacher, yeah, hello, goodbye, yes, how are you, fine, I know that, right? Then they become trouble in the classroom. So you need to challenge them, need to find new things for them to do. And again, so that's what we're doing, is we're always looking for what, for those of you studying linguistics, Vygotsky says the zone of proximal development. He means a zone where it's a little too difficult for the student. It's like weightlifting. If you're doing weights, it's no sense doing weights, say, 100 times, oh, yes, right? You know, it's no good if it's something so small and so light. You need to stress yourself by doing something more difficult. Only then do you learn, right? So that's the important thing. That's the important thing. Find some challenges. Okay, then I've got a little asterisk. And one thing not to do. And unfortunately, this is the biggest thing that most of us do. We try to teach them to pass exams. That's the focus of the class, right? Exam, test. If you don't pass the test, you won't get into the next grade. If you don't pass the next grade, you won't get into university. If you don't pass university, you'll never get a job, right? It's all about these tests, and they never stop. But, in fact, if you just only train for tests, you won't become either an effective English speaker or even an effective test taker. It's really not very good. The important thing is to build up the student's skills at home and in the classroom. You want to build up the skills so people are able to communicate. Your students are able to communicate. They're able to learn more on their own. Use those skills to ask questions, to be curious, to be interested, and to have a better career. It'll help them in that long run, because nobody, you're not going to go through life with people asking you true-false questions or multiple choice questions. Say, I'm a little hungry. Do you know where there's A, a library, B, a swimming pool, C, a restaurant, D, a shopping mall, right? You don't do that, right? Nobody asks questions like that. But our books are full of questions like that. So and they're useful and they're easy to mark, but they're not the main point. The main point is to learn to read, write, speak, and listen to English. Okay? All right, let's move on. So now I want to take a little bit of time and talk about Starship English. And I'll show you some practical ways we can talk about some of these ideas. And after I do that, then I want to go back and I want to go to those same 8 points and see if you can give me some ideas about how you would use them, right? Okay, so I'm going to be talking about one of the chapters here. I think it's chapter 3, unit 3. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about this. I'll have the pictures up on the board, but you can have a look as well if you'd like to see. Okay. Okay, the book has 7 levels. It goes from a starter level up to sort of a grade 6 level. So there's lots of different things. You can look at some of the books if you're curious later. And there's a large number of other things that come with it. I'll talk about that in a sec. Okay, there's lots of extras. There's flashcards, and the flashcards are big, right? They're about this big, yeah? And there's an interactive whiteboard, if you have interactive whiteboard in your classroom. There's an activity book, and if you're a parent, that's probably what you'll see the most, is the activity book will come home. And it also has an audio CD in it. So we'll hear a little bit of the audio here. And there's a teacher's book. And the teacher's book is probably the best part, because the teacher's book really gives lots of ideas to new teachers, to young teachers, and even to experienced teachers. Okay, let's have a look at the unit. Let's go. Okay, oh, sorry, there's another thing. There's unique characters. So we have these 2 characters. We have Star and Stella. Oops, Stella fell on the floor. Oh, poor Stella. There we are. Star and Stella. These are 2 characters in the series that help the students. Why do we have characters like this? It's because they can ask silly questions, right? You know, they say, "What color is that?" Right? If a child is asking that, say, "Well, what color do you think it is?" You know, but a little mascots can ask these silly questions, so it's kind of a fun thing for the students. Okay, and there's great characters. We use in the whole series these same characters, and they help guide the students through, and the students identify with them. You know, as they read through, they say, "Oh, I like Tessa. Oh, no, I like Emma better." You know, so they start to identify, and they can, just like a cartoon character in a novel. And there's also other characters that are like cartoon characters, which are used as well. And they give more variation for the practice especially. Okay, let's go in. Okay, so we're going to look at this one unit, and we'll have a quick overview and try to give you some ideas about how it works and how you can teach. Now, just go on to the next one. It's interesting that all of us are experienced as teachers, but in fact, textbooks quite often help us to teach better. If you just had to go into a classroom and stand there at the front of the class on the first day with nothing to help you, say, well, hello, you know, I mean, what do I say next, right? That's what textbooks do, is they think very, very carefully about what you should teach, when you should teach it, when it should be introduced, how you should recover and repeat and reinforce things that have been taught, and how can you present that information in an enjoyable way, and then finally, how can you assess that in 2 ways. Formative assessment means to find out how the students are doing. Summative assessment, to make decisions, are they ready to go on, right? So all the textbooks, they really, really help you to teach and be more effective in this way. So we're going to start off with this unit. We'll just hear the sound a little bit. I'll just play a little bit just to show you what it sounds like, because each unit has extensive recordings that go with it. So nice music, yeah? I didn't write the music. So if you're teaching this, you can see how it goes.
Unit 3. Is she happy? Track 13. Look, listen, and talk.
My pet's a mouse. He's pretty. Yes, he is. Is your cat sad?
No, she isn't.
Is she happy?
Yes, she is. She's happy.
Are your pets sad?
No, they aren't.
Are they happy?
Yes, they are. They're happy.
Okay. So that's just for the opening dialogue. And there's a lot of ways, as a teacher, you can work with that. What it's doing is it's controlling the language very, very carefully. And this is something as a textbook writer that I spent, in fact, on this series we're talking about it, I spent 6 years writing this series. It takes a long time. The first 3 years or those, we're just thinking about ideas, trying something, testing it with teachers, saying, no, it doesn't work properly, not good enough, let's redo it. And really what we're doing here is when you teach, you're really doing 3 things in English. You're talking about questions, you're talking about answers, and you're talking about statements, right? So I ask a question, how are you? You have an answer, I am fine, right? You make a statement. It's a beautiful day. Okay? So those are the basic functions in English that we're doing all the time. Asking questions, answering them, and making statements. We're also, in this unit, you can see already that we're doing something very specifically. It's saying, are your pets sad? Well, in the previous one, it goes from is to are. So we're doing subject-verb agreement. We're teaching how do you work with plurals and singular, right? So the students are learning all those things. Now, you can do this. You can do this. You can go to the students and say, okay, this is a plural, this is singular, this is the verb that you use for plural, this is the verb used for singular. But in fact, with young students, it doesn't work. It's a waste of time, right? My son, when he was 5 or something, I was on a trip and I phoned him and said, oh, Spencer, how are you? He answers the phone. Kids love to answer phones, right? And his daddy is calling from Seoul, long distance, right? He said, how are you? He said, oh, I'm fine. He says, I swimmed today with Mummy, right? I swimmed today with Mummy, right? So what do I say? I say, oh no, swim has an irregular past tense verb, you know. You should be using swam, which is the construction from esta, you know. Do I say that to him? No, I say, oh, you swam today, right? In fact, if I have to spend all that time trying to teach him the extra language of nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, you know, different tenses, subjunctive, everything else, he'd go crazy. But if I just use the language, use it repetitively, let him hear it over again, they absorb it. In fact, they create their own rules. That's what he was doing already. When he say, I swimmed, he was already creating rules based on some other words that he had heard, right? He had heard another word. He said, yeah, when you talk about something that happened yesterday or earlier, you add ed to the end of it to make the thing. So he was creating a rule. He was creating a rule, yeah? Do you want a seat? Hey, free seats up here, yeah. Don't be shy, yeah, come on. You missed the free cake and chocolate, sorry, too bad, yeah. Yeah, here, doesn't matter, yeah, be comfortable. Okay, so we got the idea. Okay, next one. All right, so we go from that into the next page, and you see we've got a picture dictionary section. So in the first pages, what you're doing is you're really introducing structures. So this is what students need. They need two things. They need vocabulary, they need new words, but they also need the structures to use them. So you can see my pet's a mouse. Well, here it's got all sorts of other vocabulary. It's got cat, dog, fish, bird. My pet's a fish. My pet's a bird. My pet's a dog. You can substitute, right? So they've got the structure, then they can substitute. And then in the other part at the top here, we have adjectives. So we've got nouns at the bottom, adjectives there. And those adjectives tell us different things, ways to describe pets. Now, these are also things, of course, to describe people. You can say people are happy, you can say they're small, you can say they're pretty, but you really don't want to say that people are fat, right? Yeah, say, he's fat, right? Children always do this. It's embarrassing. Mommy, look at that man. He's so fat, right? Oh, shh, right? So we do it with pets, and then at the same time, we're teaching them, you know, the appropriacy. Say, you know, this is something we can say about a pet, but we don't say about this. And those notes are in the teacher's book, right? Then the next section, we go on to the next section, and students have an opportunity to talk, to use the language themselves. And this is important. Because too often, when you were learning language, probably when you were young, you probably talk like machines. Like everybody say, good morning, how are you, you know, I'm fine, I am fine. What's the trouble there? You ask somebody, good morning, how are you? Oh, actually I hurt my back. What am I supposed to say? Oh, you're supposed to say I'm fine, right? Yeah, you can't say that. So, in fact, for unpredictable language, for unpredictable vocabulary, it becomes very awkward. It becomes very difficult. So we need to have opportunities to really have the students practice with the language in an open-ended way. Not too open, but a little bit, right? A little bit. Give them a chance. Okay. We also have to have alternative ways for them to learn English. So we've got a song here on the next page. And Why do we teach children songs? Why do we teach with songs? Songs and games do two wonderful things, and I'll just talk about songs first. When you sing a song, all of a sudden you lose a lot of your inhibitions. You're singing in a group and you're trying to keep up with the words, keep up with the tone. You have to do it at speed, right? You can't do it slowly when you're singing a song. You can't take your time. And speaking is a real-time activity. Listening is a real-time activity. Reading and writing actually are quite easy. Why? Because if I read something, and I'm reading something, I go, huh? Huh? Oh, go back to the top again. Huh? Go back to the other page. Huh? Stop. Look in a dictionary. But if you're speaking to someone and listening, it's in real time. So students need practice in that to get fluency, to do things a little bit more quickly. Okay, we'll just hear a bit of this one, yeah? 15, yeah.
Track 15. Sing.
Okay, all the music's different in all the ones, yeah? You can dance at the front, yeah?
My pet's a cat. My pet's a cat.
Is your cat pretty?
Yes, she is. She's pretty.
Okay. Yeah, it's like a chant, like a jazz chant, very much so, right? The songs are different. Each one is different. Each one is individually written, and we've got 9 units in each one. We've got 6 books, right? There's a lot of songs in there. And they each have original music. They're written in different ways. And some are much more like songs. It depends. It depends on which one. In the back of each book is the CD, and it has all of the music on them. It's got all of the songs, everything. Everything's recorded there. So it's a great opportunity to sort of listen to that. But it gives an idea, right? So the students are learning in a different way. It's the same vocabulary, same structures, but it's giving them more practice. And when you hear a song, quite often that will stick in your mind. So maybe afterwards, some of you will be walking home, my pet's a cat, my pet's a cat, right? Maybe you start singing it yourself. It's great for students. It's another way for motivation and improving their fluency, and also just to get them to practice. Okay. Then we go into learning tasks. Of course, they have learning tasks. So they have to choose the pictures, things like that. They have to listen, they have to check A or B. So they're using their listening skills and their thinking skills, and they're having to go not just to connect words, but connect words and pictures and sounds and ideas. So it all comes together. You're reinforcing everything. Listen and say. So they've got opportunities again. And you can see how you can use this as a teacher. What's happening in the first picture? He's got a picture of a cat. He's showing it to his friend, right? So you can see that's doing. And then what's happening? He's saying how big the cat is, right? You can see this from the picture. And then finally showing the picture of the cat. And then maybe you can describe the cat. Cat looks a little bit fat to me, right? So you can see how this is going on. But they have to listen and say without the text there. So again, it's extending, reinforcing, and extending their abilities in a logical way. Okay. Then they get opportunities to further integrate the skills. So in this case, they have to read and say. So again, at this level, it's the first level, they're just learning English. They can't do a lot. But again, it gives them great satisfaction because they can go home and say, oh, Mommy, I can read this, right? I can read this. Myself, I'm an old person, but still, I remember the first book that I read, and I sat on my dad's knee on his big chair, and I read it aloud to him. I remember when I was like 4 years old doing that, and I was so proud of myself, right? And your kids and your students will remember that. So it's a great opportunity for them to show what they can do. Good practice. And they can practice over and over again. Ask and answer, same things. Then there's games, and some sort of meaningful games. The games are quite controlled. There's other ideas for games in the teacher's books, but these are opportunities that the students have to ask questions, to use the language quite creatively. Still with the key structures, still with the key vocabulary, but to use it creatively to sort of discuss things, right? So there's instructions for all of those within. All right. Okay, just some of the other materials that come along with this it's the activity book, and I'll just flip through this fairly quickly because I want to leave a little bit of time to ask you some questions. Okay, next, sorry. As I say, the activity book also comes with an audio CD, and this is what you usually send home. Now, teachers can also use the activity book. If you've got a student in class and they do better, they're ahead of the class, great. Say, listen, you don't have to do this for homework. You do this in class while I work with the weaker students. It's a great opportunity. It's all structured with things that they can do at home, and they're different kinds of exercises. But once they finish the unit, or even finish one page because they're related, the pages, they can go back and they can do additional activities at home to build up especially their writing skills and their reading skills. And again, this is where the parents come in. If you're the type of parent who the child comes home, say, do you have homework? Yes. Okay, go do it. The student's going to be middle of the class, lower part of the class. If you're the type of the parent who says, do you have any homework? Yes, I do. Bring it out. Let's look at it together. Make sure you understand it. Let's go through it. You do it. Okay, I'm just making dinner. You do it at the kitchen table. Okay, let's see. You have a problem? Tell me. Okay, finished? Let me look at it. Okay, you read. Show me what you did. Yeah? That's really going to make a better student. So if you're a parent, that's what you need to be doing. Okay? So it's very similar sorts of exercises, so it's not so difficult for the students. And they're in black and white. And again, as a parent, you can always say, oh, well, these are black and white. Why don't you color them in? So we purposely left them so that, because students at the young age love to color. So they can go and, again, they're spending more time thinking about it, more time looking at it, and they can do more things with it, right? At each one, there's a couple of games in there, because we finish off in a fun way. Because the most important thing, number one, most important thing you can do as a parent or as a teacher is to make your child or student love English. If they enjoy it, they will put so much more effort into it. It won't be work. It'll be something that they enjoy doing, and they'll do it more on their own. They'll be self-directed learners. Okay. Okay, there's a teacher's book that comes with this series. It's appropriate for beginning teachers and experienced. It has a range of things. The teacher's book has reduced masters, so you can just hold it up, you can read it, see all the answers, and read the activities, tell the students what to do in detail. It has strategies and skills focus, so it'll give you strategies to use. There's options for mixed ability classes, because I know this happens. Sometimes you have some very strong students and you have very weak students. What do you do? They're both in the same class. So it gives lots of ideas of what to do. And options for individual, pair work, and group work, because that's how we use language. Right now, individual work. I'm standing up here, talking by myself, right? Earlier this morning, sitting having coffee with Sarah. So we're having pair work, right? Later on, I'll talk to all of you. We'll have group work. It's life. We're always in different language situations where we need to use the language differently. So we have those options. Okay, just giving you a couple of things. You can just see the way it's focused, it's organized, and it's very easy to read. Lots of tips. Go to the next page, yeah. Lots of things to do, and there's extra activities that students can do. It's all built in there. So again, if you have students who need more help, or students who are above the rest of the class and need more challenges, remember we talked about challenges, we have opportunities there. There's listening activities in there, and very importantly, there's culture notes and extension activities. Culture notes are things like, how do you, I spoke about this earlier. You can say that a pet is fat, but you shouldn't say that a person is fat. So, and culturally, what's appropriate in some countries and not in others. So again, when you're learning language, you're learning a culture. You have to learn a new culture. If I'm learning Korean, I have to learn about kimchi and taekwondo and different ideas, right, that are part of the culture. Otherwise, it's difficult to understand. This helps the students learn. And the extension activities are just additional things that they do. Sorry, go ahead. Okay, so now it's your job. Now your job. I'm just going to go through, use one illustration, and ask you, see if we can get any ideas from here, and I'll share some ideas. How would you do this to go through these 8 points? Because I want to go through these 8 secrets again, and I want to think, How can we use it in every class, every day, and at home every day? Okay, so let's just look at one. Okay, so the first one was about setting goals. Remember I said at the beginning of the class I talked about short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals? Okay, anybody, don't be shy. Your teachers, don't be shy, right? Okay, tell me, what's a goal you could set for a student if you were doing this? What's a goal? Just a simple goal. Adjectives. Okay, adjectives. All right, good. Okay, great. Say, and pets. Okay, so adjectives and pets. So the first one, maybe at a low level, you just want them to learn the vocabulary. You'll have to learn to read it, how to say it, and how to spell it. Those would be very basic ones for very short-term goals, right? A further one are adjectives. So she's saying adjectives. Say these are words that describe how people feel or how they are, right? Are they happy or are they big, right? What other adjectives can you do? And then you ask the students, you're challenging them, right? So you're saying, what other adjectives could you find that would do this? And that would be more of a medium goal. A longer term goal, let's see if you can use all of these and find more animals. And maybe in a classroom you say, okay, let's today on the wall we want to make pictures of animals. Go find magazines and things. You cut out pictures of animals or on the internet and we'll put them all up and we'll have all the animals under A, B, C, D. So you're teaching the alphabet again, right? So they start bringing in other animals. They're extending what they know and they're excited about it in some way. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, goals. Those goals are in the book as well, in the teacher's book. So you'll see them listed under aims, really. Students learn how to name pets, so they should be able to do that. Describe characteristics and emotions using pets. So that's the basic ones. Okay, let's go on. The second one, finding motivation. How could this be motivating for students at this level? What's something we could use to motivate students? What do you think? Do any of you have pets? Do any of your students have pets? Yes? No? Yes, my students have pets? No, they don't? Yeah. I know they do. Okay, so some of your students have pets. So with something like this, finding motivation, right? Maybe, do you have a pet? Yes. Could you bring a picture of your pet, right? Or can you write about your pet? And then all of a sudden the student has something very personal to do. So this is the great thing about motivation. If we can personalize it in some way, ask the student, say, talk about your pet and give us an idea. And that'll help them. That'll help them to really sort of internalize this information because they will remember every time when they go home, they'll look at their pet and they won't think, you know, there's Muffy. They'll think, oh, my pet's a dog. He is big. He is lazy. He's fat. He's, hungry. Different things. You'll start thinking about that at home in English, thinking in English when they see their pet. Okay, they like to talk about their world. So students are motivated when they see language that they think they will be using. So if they can see themselves using the language, they're much more motivated, right? Okay. Find good models. Okay, so where can we remember we talked about good models? Where can we find good models for things about pets and emotions and adjectives, things like that? Any ideas? Oh, so shy, yeah. Any ideas? They're shy, Sarah? Yeah, it's okay. All right, okay, so don't worry. Okay, so finding good models. Obviously the textbook is a good model, but you can ask them again. Find pictures of cats from magazines, or find a storybook about magazines, or a storybook about pets. Find something like that you can bring in. Is there a little animated video? Well, yes, Disney has lots of movies about pets, right? So you look at those types of movies, and you say, well, let's look at a little movie about pets, and then you can describe the pets in The Fox and the Hound, right? It's a famous Disney movie. 101 Dalmatians, right? Famous Disney movie. You can talk about those sorts of things and describe the pets. Okay, so the language models, again, we mentioned this earlier. Teachers, you're the first language model, so try to use English as much as possible in the classroom. Use it for everything you talk about. From the moment the students come in, make them use English and you use English. Parents, try to find opportunities to use English. It's difficult for you to speak English to your kids, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. When my children were young, my wife and I, we lived in Hong Kong for many years. We lived in Beijing as well. So sometimes my wife and I speak in secret code, right? Drives our kids nuts, right? So I say, I'll say, 你喜欢一点的冰淇淋? Something like that, right? So I'm saying to my wife, would you, in Chinese, would you like a little bit of ice cream, right? So the boys going, 冰淇淋, 冰淇淋. But then they learned the word 冰淇淋. They knew it was ice cream after a while. So if we said, do we have any ice cream? They say, ice cream, let's have ice cream. They learn. It's interesting. And French, we're doing the same thing now. Okay, so you can be models for them. Video, again, computer programs, if there's any computer games in English, anything that they can do. Again, extend their opportunity to see good models of English. Okay. Strategies and skills. What strategies or skills could we teach them here? What strategies? Because we teach strategies. They acquire the skills. So shy. Okay, so a strategy would be, okay, this is a group of words and they're organized in a certain way. They're organized just with pictures. A good strategy would be to think, well, how else could you organize this? Or how could you combine these into sentences? Or how could you do something else with this to better understand it, right? How to study, really. So if you're studying this, you might say to the students, okay, well, let's do this. Why don't you write out all the words in alphabetical order, right? So then they're learning them in a different way. They're thinking, oh, what comes first? And when they're doing that, it's not just that they're trying to put it in alphabetical order. A computer can do that easily, right? But what they're doing is they're looking at each word, they're looking at the spelling carefully, and they're thinking. And that's really what you want them to do. Find ways to make them think. So strategies and skills help train the student's mind and make them self-directed learners. So they teach them ways that they can learn. Say, okay, what else could you learn about? What kind of toys do you have at home, right? And then you can say, then they say, oh, well, I have this, 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 and this. And then they're putting together lists as well, and they're describing them. Create an English environment. So for using something like this, how do we create an English environment? Any ideas? A poster? Yeah. Yeah. Posters, magazines, things like that. Again, ask students to, be a lazy teacher. Be a lazy teacher, please. Ask students to bring in pictures of pets. So they bring in, find a magazine, could be from a cat food advertisement or anything, Just bring in a picture of a pet. Everyone bring in one. And then we put them up on the wall, and then the students describe them. This cat is fat, right? And then they can describe each one. And the students have done all the work, and they've had fun looking for it, and they've had to think in some way, and then they're creating an English environment for themselves. Parents, you can do the same thing at home, right? So they need to see and hear English. So again, just focus on materials that the student enjoys. Magazines, cartoons, music. Maybe there's music, songs about cats or songs about pets. Posters, anything that you can put up that helps the students. Read, read, read. Okay, so something like this. Very simply, find materials about pets that the students can read about. Find things that are adjectives. And if you're very ambitious as a parent or as a teacher, write a story or ask the students to write a story using those words. Can you write a story using these words, maybe some other ones? And the students will have difficulty, but they're challenging themselves. So that's great. Pushing themselves, so you get them involved. Reading is the gateway skill, helps all others. Students should always have English language materials that suit their interests, right? You're not going to give Shakespeare to a 5-year-old, right? You're not going to teach a grade 1 student E equals MC squared. Something appropriate to their level. Comic books are fine. Doesn't matter what they read. Parents often ask me this. Doesn't matter. I don't care if they're reading comics, as long as they're reading. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, so something like this. You might try for fluency. Here's something. How quickly can you count from 1 to 10? Right? How quickly? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How quickly can you count to 10 in your head? If you're a parent, have the children at home, usually, I don't know, at your house, but my house, the children come home after school or after their sports activities. They'll do their homework, right? But also, before bed, I often say, now, that was interesting what you were doing earlier. Tell me about that, right? And they'll explain a bit about it. So a few minutes spread throughout the day is a better way to study. Find new challenges. So in something like this, again, I think what we've already mentioned is find new animals. Try to find as many animals as possible. Try to find as many adjectives as possible. And what's the difference between them? That would be a good challenge. Encourage students' curiosity to learn more. So then students start to realize, like, hey, it's not just the teacher that tells me everything. I can learn things and take it back to the classroom and tell the teacher something new that I learned, right? So then nothing children enjoy more than trying to be adults. You always see young children playing, right? They play house, they play school, they play little games like that. They like to be teachers. So they like to share what they know with others. Students get excited about learning. Students are excited about learning. Most of them really enjoy learning. That's something that as teachers and as parents, we need to take advantage of. We need to keep them as interested in learning as possible. And we have to find ways to maintain that excitement. We can do that through using, interesting and exciting materials and showing an interest in what they're doing, both in the classroom and at home. Tell them that you're interested in finding out more and seeing how they use English and giving them the opportunities basically to do so. It'll make learning a language more enjoyable, and because it's more enjoyable, it will be more effective and more efficient, right? Okay. All right. That's all I have for today, but now I'd like to hear if you have some questions. Maybe you have some particular problems or some particular issues with your students or your children. I think we have some time for questions now. Yeah? Yeah?
이제 마감을 하려고 하고요. 굉장히 현장에서 티칭 경험을 바탕으로 한 그런 실제적인 이야기들을 많이 해주신 것 같습니다. 긴 시간 동안 저희하고 함께 해주셔서 감사하고요. 오늘 먼 밴쿠버에서부터 오신 Dr. Kim 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Thank you. 감사합니다.